lost weight for my wedding. Then I started gaining weight back. And then I decided I wanted to have a baby. I went to the doctor and they were like, you have PCOS. You have hypothyroidism. As someone that works in healthcare, like I know what you're supposed to do. Protein's good, lots of carbs are bad, like don't eat ice cream every day. Like for me, it was much more psychological than what I realized. You can work out and not be a punishment. You can eat healthy and it makes you feel better, not because it's 0 points.
Today, I welcome Lynn Howell to our episode, and today we're going to talk about her journey with managing weight loss and finding her new self and being able to live life with joy and being able to find ways to be healthy. It's a really awesome story. I think you're going to like it and enjoy.
For a long time, I thought I was like pushing myself to where I couldn't do any more than what I was already doing. And then
like I've already done all I can do. And
I know what I need to do. I do it and I'm still not getting where I need to go. So it's not my fault.
Right.
And
I'm just kind of.
Yeah. Like, and not realizing I was putting mental barriers on myself.
So it's a little bit of a hopeless mindset, but almost in a protective way.
Yeah.
What do you think maybe what you're protecting from, do you think?
Like I've always been someone that like wants to succeed. So when I would start and work really hard and not see results. So then I would just kind of blame other stuff.
Right.
And say it's, you know, I don't have the time or I don't have this. I'm not seeing what I need to do. It's my body, you know?
Right.
And then as I started to go down my weight loss journey, I kind of started realizing that I was doing things for the wrong reasons, and I was punishing myself and not embracing like what the value I could actually get out of, you know, eating right and exercising and all these things that I started to do after like getting ready for surgery and after I had surgery. So
I'm curious as to, was there a length of time between when you started actually reflecting and not being happy with the way things were and actually kind of making those efforts? Or was there a period of time where you kind of just lived the same way, not even recognizing that there's maybe issues that need to be addressed or problems that we want to?
Yeah, it's been, I said I've worked at my job for 10 years. So after college, it kind of hits you, you kind of get to this point where, oh, now my world's different, right? Okay. Now I'm working. I don't have to be at school all the time. So I could be distracted by other things when you're in school. And I was working midnight shifts. So I really like had all this time that I never had before. Right. Oh, yeah. So I started doing things back then, Weight Watchers, and was pretty successful. And then I would get to a point where I would just pretty much hit a point where I couldn't get any further. Right. And then I just would progress back up in weight wise. And that part I kind of was more focused on weight. And then I would try. And more like your nutrition. Yeah, nutrition. Yeah. And then I would try fitness stuff, but I didn't really know what to do. I was never comfortable going to a gym. I was never athletic. Like my entire life. My sisters. Different. They're so easy. Like they had it so easy athletic wise. We did sports as kids and they're like, if your sister's not doing it, then you're not doing it because we're not just driving you. So that's a whole other story. But yeah, so I think that I was always self-conscious on how I looked when I did things. And so I would try couch to 5K and I never could mentally get past a certain point. And then I would just give up for a little while and then I would start back at it and kind of go back and forth. I lost weight for my wedding. Then I started gaining weight back. And then I decided I wanted to have a baby. I went to the doctor and they were like, you have PCOS, you have hypothyroidism, which polycystic ovarian syndrome. Okay. So it's basically a metabolic syndrome that affects how your body produces glucose and sugar and processes things. So that was a contributing factor on why I couldn't lose weight. Right. And I had hypothyroidism, so I couldn't lose weight because of that. So they're like, that's going to cause you some troubles getting pregnant. So I had to go on medicine to get pregnant. Ended up having some issues throughout my pregnancy with gestational diabetes and pretty much was miserable my entire pregnancy because I was already overweight. Because it's even more uncomfortable. Yes. Yeah. So I was overweight and then I was miserable pregnant because I obviously you gain weight pregnant. It's not a good experience for me.
Sure.
So then when my son was born, you want to be there for your kid, but you don't feel comfortable. You don't want pictures of yourself. You don't. I'm sitting on the sidelines while my husband and him are running around the yard because I can't run around the yard. Even though I didn't realize I was limited in that way, I was. I realize now
When you reflect
how
back.
much then I was holding myself back.
So what was it like back then? I mean, you reflected back and going, oh, it's holding me back. But what was kind of the mindset back then that maybe perpetuated
I
things?
think I was just hopeless. Like, I just didn't know what I needed to do because I felt like I was doing everything I could do. Like, I would try to bike, and then it was like, you're a new mom, you're tired, and it's you always have all these excuses you can always use, and I always kind of fell back on that. And so when I couldn't succeed, I was like, oh, it's because of all these issues. I can't help it.
So there was a real mental struggle.
Yeah.
That was happening a lot that probably affected your mood, stress level.
Oh yeah. I'm a control freak.
Yeah.
I'm a self-proclaimed control freak since I was a kid. You know, I raised my sisters. So I kind of owned all of this stuff my whole life. So when I couldn't control the weight, I think is a big factor for me. Like,
Sure.
I couldn't control what was going on with me. So I'd use the excuses. And
Because that's not like you. You were able to manage and control everything. So
Yes.
if I can't control something,
it's not my fault. I decided I was going to get very serious about losing weight. My son was 2, and I actually managed the bariatric surgery clinic for 3 years prior to having surgery. So I had seen the patients be successful. I had seen people fail. And I kind of went into it knowing that it was a huge life change.
And
So
it's not just it's not like a simple process.
No.
There's a lot that goes into it.
yeah, so I basically told myself, it was about January of 2019, that if by June I hadn't made any progress, and I was actually seeing my endocrinologist. We were doing some medical weight loss management with medications. I was tracking all my food. I was doing all these things. And he's like, you should be losing weight. Like, you are in a calorie deficit. You should be losing weight. And I just couldn't get there. So I decided that in June, I went for really wasn't a consultation. I was just like, hey, Dr. Gaba, because I had worked with him for 3 years.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I'm thinking about doing this. And he's like, okay, let's get you started. You start that process. And that was my first initial meeting, and then I ended up having surgery in October of that year. So it takes about usually 6 months to a year, depending on your insurance, on when you can have surgery, but there's a lot of clearances to get there.
What was that process like for you? Like, just that journey must have been...
It was interesting because you have to have pulmonary clearance. So that's one of the first clearances you did. So you go and you have a sleep study. You have to have like all these other breathing tests. And then you see the pulmonologist and they say, yeah, you're good for surgery. We don't see anything that's a risk. Cardiology, same thing. I just had to do one appointment with them. I don't have any kind of cardiac history, all that
you just
stuff.
have to
check that box. And then you had to do a site clearance. So I basically had one appointment with a psychologist, and we did some like testing, behavior testing, and then, which also is kind of a weird situation because, again, I knew him because he works for the hospital.
Sure. But now you're changing the boundary there. Like, now you get to know all about me.
Yeah. Now, and it's kind of, I reflect back on that, I would say I knew so much about this surgery before I had it because I had been in the office for so long and with the program and seen the patients. And I still felt afterwards like I was mentally like, what just happened? So.
Because you were, I mean, when we talk about this a lot, from a cognitive level, you can see it cognitively, but to actually go through the experience, I mean, it's a completely different.
Yeah. So, I had that one meeting or one session with the therapist and or psychologist, and, he asked, do you binge eat? And unless you're really self-reflective, you're like, no, I don't cope with food. I don't do, You know, I like to eat. Who doesn't like to eat? Like, but I don't think I'm that bad. Like,
sure.
Until after surgery, when you're like, what do I do with all my time now?
Sure.
How do I make myself feel better? Because you physically can't eat.
Right. Because when you get that surgery, you are very restricted on number of calories, because they basically ounces.
Yeah, like think when I went through all that, and then I had surgery. Basically, I got all my clearances. They have a support group. You have to attend 2 support groups.
Can I ask you, the psychologist, what are they trying to figure out? Can you handle the restrictions?
Can you handle the surgery? Are you going to be successful? Do you have a support system? That's one of the big things. So they do look to see if you need further counseling. Like they won't give clearance to everybody. They'll say you need to like establish yourself.
Stuff,
And if people don't have like a strong support system, that's always like a red flag, because it is hard. And then you see a nutritionist for the whole time leading up to surgery and afterwards, kind of to prepare you on what should you be eating. And
was a lot of it related to not knowing what to eat, or is it maybe more psychological, kind of like what you're saying, using food to cope or
for
reward?
me,
or
as someone that works in healthcare, like I know what you're supposed to do. Protein's good. Lots of carbs are bad. Like don't eat ice cream every day. Like all that stuff. Like I knew what you were supposed to do.
Right.
But I didn't realize, it was definitely, for me, it was much more psychological than what I realized. Yeah, it was definitely afterwards. So I had surgery. You're in the hospital for a day, spend the night. My husband was terrified for me to have surgery.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because he was just afraid something bad was going to happen to me, because it is a major surgery. I had
there's definite risks to it.
You know, every surgery is risk of death, you know. And again, working in the clinic, he's heard me talk about, you know, people that maybe have had.
And what about you? You've seen probably bad results or.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's things that happen to people, and it's not always in control. You don't always have control of those things.
Well, and then you said yourself, you're a control freak, and then to be under for surgery where you have absolutely no control.
It's funny because, I knew everyone that was operating on me. I came out of surgery and I was like, was my liver okay? Because you have to go on this liver shrink diet for a month before surgery, where you basically don't eat any fat. After you have surgery, you start with a medicine cup of liquids.
Oh, that's part of your...
1 ounce at a time. I had the bypass, gastric bypass. So there's 2
types.
Yeah, the major sleeve and Roux-en-Y. So I had the Roux-en-Y. With that, they like reroute your stomach, basically. Your stomach's about the size of an egg. You at the hospital, before they'll send you home, you drink like a little medicine cup an hour. Sip on it for an hour.
Of what? Just like
clear liquids.
Clear liquids.
Clear liquids. So you are on clear liquids and full liquids. So like think like yogurt, protein shakes. For my surgery, it was 2 weeks after. So you don't have a lot of energy. I'd never had major surgery before. I mean, I had a kid, but that was like totally different.
Sure.
And they do pretty good pain management while you're in the clinic or in the hospital. And then about day 3 or 4, because they use a block. And so about day 4 is when it hits you when you're home. And I luckily had my mom there to help with my kid and stuff. And I prepped food for my family. I was all prepared. I'm like, I can't cook. I can't eat. But this whole time you're afraid of that you're going to mess up. You just did this drastic. Yeah, am I drinking too fast? Am I eating too much? Am I hitting my protein goals? Am I gonna mess this up? Because I've messed up everything else. I failed at everything else up until this point, and now I've done this drastic thing.
Which doesn't sound like provide you a whole lot of comfort.
No, because it's kind of like you're like, okay, you come out of surgery, and we kind of joke about this, but there was a patient that came out and was like, I don't look any different after the surgery, because you have to wait. It takes a while to be able to see it.
Right.
So then you go to like a pureed diet, and again, it's like you're at home now. You're starting to feel better. You start being able to walk, move about, and then it's like, what do I do with myself? Like, I'm stressed. I obviously can't go eat anything because I can only eat my protein shake at this point.
And everybody else around you is eating other foods
so
that
like it
you
was
used
like
to be able to eat.
So I had surgery at the beginning of October. So I ran into the holidays,
Halloween,
Thanksgiving, Christmas, and all of that. So by Christmas I was allowed real food, but literally like you can.
But even then you can't.
No, it's like basically like you go to like 4 ounces of food at some point. Even at this point, like I can eat like probably 6 to 7 ounces of food at a time.
That's a lot of, you have to measure and be really,
So you have to like.
And that's probably, is that a big piece of the, probably focusing on losing weight without the surgery requires some real focus and attention to detail to a certain extent around what I eat and what I put in my body and moving and exercising. Getting the surgery doesn't alleviate any of that. It actually probably intensifies it even more.
Yeah, because you're tracking your calories. You're making sure you have, you have enough protein, you have enough this. Because one of the risks with after you have surgery is that you're malnourished. Because you're consuming so little calories at a time. So, initially you lose weight easy. Everyone's like, initially, like that first 6 months, like honeymoon period, you're going to lose weight because you physically can't eat enough to like sustain an adult body, basically. Throughout this whole time, like I had started going to the gym. So when I decided before I had surgery, I started going to the gym, working out. I obviously had to take a break after I had surgery. But basically started realizing that working out was not, because I always equated, if anyone's ever done Weight Watchers, like you get so many activity points and you get to eat those back.
It gives you, if I work out for an hour, I can eat more.
It's like, 3 points, that's equals, I don't know.
So you're working out to be able to eat more, not to actually
so you're like, I ate bad, so I need to work out. So that's the kind of mindset I was always in up until I was preparing for surgery.
Sure.
And so after I had surgery, I continued to work out, continued to follow, the recommendations. Sure. I started running in January after my surgery. Like I said, I tried running before, was a no-go.
Yeah,
I never got through it. But I've ran 2 half marathons this year.
Wow.
And I have found things that are to fill that time, and I have put value in that time and focusing on me. I think one of the biggest things is you're always afraid to like have that time to yourself.
Left alone with your own thoughts? Or?
Yeah. Or even as a mom, like to say I'm going to take an half hour. Like I don't have a half hour in my day to do X, Y, and Z. But it's kind of what habits do I do to make sure that I can do those things? Maybe this is kind of what I'm hearing is, and I hear a lot of people think about this, that if I take care of myself, then I'm neglecting somebody else or I'm neglecting some other responsibility that I'm supposed to do. And I would imagine as a mom, I can't do that. I have a kid to raise or job to do or whatever. And it's like, I like to sleep. So like for a long time I was like, I can't get up early and I can't stay up late. But, so I read this book. It was called Atomic Habits. I don't know if you've ever read.
I haven't read it, but I've seen it or heard it.
And I read it kind of halfway through my journey, and it was about the atomic habits, which are the small habits, is what, like your habit isn't running a half marathon. It's the little things. It's getting up and putting your shoes out. It's getting up and having your workout clothes are already out from the night before. So like as a control freak, I have built habits in to make it easier for me. So I get up at 4:30 every morning. Mm-hmm. I have. Was that different? Is that what you did differently? Because you said I tried running before and it didn't. I think I honestly like losing the weight helped because at that point I had lost.
It's harder to run.
Yeah, when you're overweight. And again, it was like a mental block. Like I was like, I can't do this. I'm hot. I'm sweaty. Like I just can't do this. people are looking at me. I'm comfortable with my own body. And kind of I got to the point where it was like, no one else is looking at me. Mm-hmm. And I started seeing the differences from losing the weight initially, and it just kind of allowed me to focus on myself and not really worry about what everyone else was seeing.
Did you ever check that as far as this idea that we have that people are looking at us and judging us? Did you ever check that? Or how did you, like, was there an experience that really triggered no one's looking at me? Like,
I don't know that it was really, so no one knows this probably besides people that have had weight loss surgery. There's a huge weight loss surgery community on Instagram. Mm-hmm. So I have a specific Instagram that's just weight loss. Like it's like my diary of my whole journey through weight loss surgery, sure, pre-op to now. And I think that community was really interesting to like hear all these other people going through the same things. And it was mm-hmm. like, okay, there's more people around here that relate to me than or than judging. Yeah, not alone. And then it kind of becoming more comfortable with yourself. And I said it's kind of funny because I posted on that this weekend. I went running. I was on a trip in Indiana this weekend, and I went running around the state park while we were by myself. And I had like a sports bra and workout pants. And then the next day I ran in shorts, where I'm like, before I would have been so self-conscious that someone was looking at me or judging me. And I was like, people probably just think I'm a badass now. Like, look at this girl running through the woods by herself. Like, I kind of like that is, to me, I think it's just seeing like, that's amazing. From where I was to where I am now, like it took a while to get there, and I still get self-conscious. I mean, yeah, we all, but I think it was just more of realizing I was doing it for me, and then shifting to like, just, I had a strong support group that like said, you're doing amazing. I wish I could do that. And like, it kind of gives you that confidence. Sure.
Well, and that's where you can find hope and, progress, that good things can happen, and that I'm not stuck, that,
I also got on some anxiety meds that probably helped.
Okay. Yeah.
I forgot about that part.
Right.
I started having panic attacks after I had surgery. I think it was like the control thing. It was just mm-hmm. like, and because I didn't have food to cope, I went to my primary care doctor and was like, I went to the gym and I just couldn't get out of my car. Mm-hmm. I was just sitting there and I couldn't get out of my car. And then later that night, I was sitting on the couch. I felt like I couldn't breathe. So I thought maybe I'd go run. Maybe that would help. Mm-hmm. And she's like, have you ever had a panic attack before? And I'm like, I don't know. And she's like, because you did. Mm-hmm. And kind of realized that was probably a contributing factor to some of my other issues. But so out of this whole process, I said it was a physical challenge, but the mental part of it was so much more difficult than anything that I ever expected, even knowing everything I know about the surgery.
Yeah. Well, we often talk about how we physically often, like, our physical self is often a reflection of what we're struggling with mentally, like, because mm-hmm. our body takes the brunt of the stress from our mental states.
Yeah.
When we're stressed and dysregulated all the time, we experience that physically, mm-hmm. Because everything's connected. So we everything is like this reciprocal feedback loop. Like our mental state leads to poor coping leads to a poor physical self, which then reinforces this mental self, and so we just kind of this negative feedback loop that just is hard, or just really challenging to get out of.
Yeah, you just can't. I think I just always felt like I was struggling to be better, and I didn't know how to get there because I did know what was really wrong.
Right. Has there been any kind of in the self-reflection? Do you think about kind of how maybe you got there, or how the journey kind of got yourself there, or at least kind of reflecting of like trying to make sense of things kind of in our past that maybe contribute, like especially around like I'm a control freak and there's reasons why I was a control freak, and
I kind of had a rough childhood. Mm-hmm. I had a rough childhood in certain ways. My mom and dad, my stepdad, my mom, My mom had kind of left us at a young age. My sister was in kindergarten, and my youngest sister, and I kind of took on, I was in 8th grade, so I kind of took on
the responsibility,
mom responsibility. So from that time, like, my main focus was always other people.
Right.
And you know, when we were kids, there wasn't a lot of talk about like, oh, let's go move our body. It was just, we kind of did things, but we didn't know why.
Right.
And we also never talked about like nutrition, really. It was like, we lived in the country, so we didn't have access to fast food. We didn't have access to, like, the closest town is 20 minutes away. Right. And so
it wasn't easy just to
go and grab something. So I feel like that shifted when I went to college. I moved to Youngstown. So it was like Taco Bell, Buffalo Wild Wings,
country to city.
Yeah. So I think that was like when I started like kind of using food more.
Right.
But I didn't know any different. Like, I didn't know that, like, I mean, you know, fast food, you hear that, but you don't really see it, I guess. I don't know. It was just like, I didn't connect the two. And I never really did physical activity much as a kid, besides like I never was athletic. I never really did sports, but I wasn't really able to because I didn't have anyone to take me places.
Sure. And you probably didn't necessarily think about those things.
No.
Being so young and taking care of your siblings, and the idea of thinking that you would have time probably to do something like that would be a stretch. Yeah.
And, you know, I cooked dinner, and, you know, as a kid, I only knew how to make so many things like spaghetti and hamburger helper. And so I don't think that I ever really learned the value of nutrition in a way that was
set
healthy.
This pattern of.
So it kind of, and then as I got older and in college, like I said, that was a good time, like, to go out and do stuff. It was always a special occasion. Even as a kid, going out to eat, stuff like that was a big deal. And so I think that I always use food as like a positive enforcer. Like, you know, you think about how much of your day and life is connected to food.
Right.
You know, oh, I want to hang out with my friends. Okay, where do you want to eat?
Right.
We're going to go have family Christmas. Okay, I can't wait to eat grandma's cooking. Like, you link all these memories to food. And unlike a lot of other things in life, you can't just not have food.
Right. Well, and it's very rewarding to our brain.
Yes.
It gives us a lot of nice stuff.
If Oreos tasted awful,
we wouldn't have problems with it.
We wouldn't have problems with it. But so I kind of think that all of that kind of stemmed to me kind of just not knowing, being aware. I would, and then even when I did go to like Weight Watchers or something like that, it was always like, you know, I have to give up this to have this. And I didn't really understand I should be finding joy in those things. You can work out and not be a punishment. You can eat healthy and it makes you feel better, not because it's 0 points.
Right. And
when you're in that kind of mindset where it's like, I have to do this to get this,
I always wondered about like Weight Watchers, because I have friends or people I know that use Weight Watchers and the points and all these different things. It just makes it more tedious to eat.
Yeah.
Like, you're not like I understand the reasoning behind it, but I can imagine why, like, how am I going to keep it up? Or I can see getting really exhausted really quickly.
Yeah. So I did it for almost like a year and a half. I lost a good bit of weight, but then then it stopped, and I didn't know why. Like, why did I quit losing weight? Why did I, gain weight back and all these things? So I just think that it wasn't sustainable for me. More of like, what am I going to do to make sure my son doesn't go through that? Like, so that's like my biggest like self-reflection is like, so we talk about like, now there's so many resources out there, like how to teach kids to have like a healthy relationship with food and like moving our bodies. And I will tell my son, like, I need my me time.
Right.
So I'm running on the treadmill right now. I need my me time. I can't help you with this fire truck right now because you're increasing my anxiety and this makes me feel better. Right. Like we talk a lot about, you know, that time is important so that I make sure that I'm balanced because I have I
need to regulate so that I can be a better mom.
Yeah. A better wife and have balance. So if that means I have to get up at 4:30 in the morning to do that, that's what I do. Because if I'm working out and it gets disrupted, then that stresses me out. Yeah. Because then it's like breaking up what I'm like, I just have this time. So, that's what I have to do. Like those small habits, like I set out my workout clothes every night. You know, I have a routine in the mornings that gets me to, it's like, as long as you do that first step, it's going to get you to
get moving.
Yeah.
Kind of
get moving
forward.
So
how big of a role does that support group that you talk about or your support group play in those atomic habits that you've created for yourself or sticking to those things? Is that something that you connect with? Because I would imagine, and this is just my perception of it, that the support network seemed to grow after the surgery and that's been a very powerful experience for you to handle.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely, it's good, but then it's kind of getting to the point now that I'm not losing weight anymore. I'm about a little over a year and a half, and I've kind of like leveled out, which is completely normal. I'm at a weight but then you see other people that have had this, they go further. And that's kind of sometimes hard too, because then you're in that comparison game again. So, but there's some people that I've really connected on there. I have a girl that she lives in Iowa. She had surgery the day before me, and we've really connected. And it's nice to always have that person to talk to. It was a big change, like support group wise. Like my husband, for us, it was a big change because, again, I changed myself in the way that like I have to take this time for myself, and I've always been a person that gives all my time to everybody else.
Drop everything. And
yeah. So that was an adjustment for us, and a lot of.
Were these conversations you had with your husband prior to? Is that something that like was planned out, or is that something that just kind of no? I just realized this is what I need, and
yeah. I mean, I was working out before, but it was kind of hard because it was like I went from one extreme to another, and trying to find that balance and when it was when it worked and when it didn't. So I was going to the gym after work. Well, that makes dinner later, and that makes X, Y, and Z. So luckily, you know, COVID happened and I got locked in my house for a year and a half. So I invested in my home gym. And so that actually works out better for me because I would feel guilty, you know, that I'm at the gym and my kid's still at daycare and I have to go pick him up, and then I'd rush, and I really feel like I didn't get that shift until like that clarity, like the enjoyment of the working out until I started doing it at home. Because I was alone. I have that time to myself. And
so was the working out in public, you said, because there was a little bit more attention away from working out and more to what's happening around me?
Yeah.
And so then you didn't have to worry about that when you're at home.
Yeah. Because you're always like, oh, wow, I wish I could do that. Or you see these people around you, and, you know, the gym, everything's all spread out. And again, I didn't really know what I was doing.
Sure.
I had no clue what I was doing. So since COVID, I connected with some personal trainers that they're from California. A girl, her journey's been amazing, and I was following her, and she started offering personal training. So I got with her, and then I'm about almost a year in with their programs that they refresh. And so I have strength training and cardio, and like, it just makes it easy. I'm a plan person. So like,
of course,
if I know what to do that day, it makes it easier for me. It takes the stress off of it. So I think that's probably contributing to too, is like having a better plan versus going to the gym and being like, oh, let me pull up this workout and try to follow it, and not really.
There's not a whole lot of predictability to what you're doing. You're just on the fly, just picking something, which actually negatively impacts your outcomes because the body's not getting used to that pattern.
Yeah. And I think that, this whole thing is, I learned more about myself. So I need that my time. I need that time for myself to reflect and kind of have that quiet start to the day and not just start with being available to everybody else. So
food was a reward for you. It was kind of a cope. Where did you find different rewards? Did you seek out different rewards? Like, do you fill those rewards?
So it's still something I'm working on. Honestly, I've actually been in the search of trying to find a lot of the people that I follow in that Instagram community have like food therapists or people that specialize in like food and the relationship with food, because as I get more post-op, I can eat more things.
Okay.
Not eat more quantity of things. Right. The limitations, not, at this point I pretty much can eat like what you would consider like what a adult should eat.
Okay.
So like if you go to a restaurant, that's more than a serving size. Yeah. So I can eat a serving size, like.
Right. Was that in your hand or something?
Yeah.
Like a hand?
Yeah. So I can, like I said, 6 to 7 ounces pretty much, which is like, half protein, half, vegetables. And I try to balance that and pack my lunch and all that stuff. But it is easier because I can eat more. I recently have started I need to stop doing some things to get back in bad habits of grabbing a handful of cereal when your kid's eating cereal. I mean, it's just, some people get really sick after they have surgery, by those things,
by eating
it's
too
just
much,
sugar or any, and I didn't have anything like that. They have what's called dumping syndrome. But I never had anything like that. So I really think that's my next step, basically. It's I feel like I'm very aware of a lot of my issues and what they were caused by, but I don't really know what I'm supposed to do about it.
Having awareness doesn't necessarily, it gives you a starting point, but then you have to figure out how I'm going to deal with that. Maybe what I would imagine is that hopefully in that awareness, you're able to recognize when you're falling into those bad habits, so then you can kind of reach out for support or do something that helps in those situations.
Yeah, it's if I find myself doing that, and I'm like, okay, well, I've been out of my protein bars that I really like, and those are always a good go-to snack for me, and different things like that. And it's kind of just making sure I'm prepared. And as you get more comfortable, you kind of slide back a little bit. You always slide back into kind of those old habits a little bit because you're I got this.
Yeah.
But for someone that's in my position, it's a lifelong thing. Just because I had surgery doesn't mean
that I can go crazy with the food.
anything. Yeah. So
how do you handle mistakes? Have you experienced mistakes and what do you like?
Oh, this past weekend I went to a bachelorette all weekend.
Yeah.
Thursday through Sunday. It's the first time I've been by myself without my kid for 5 years. It was amazing. But I definitely indulged. Yeah. I had a s'more. I indulge more than I would normally. But then I reflect back. I really try not to punish myself because that's where my brain gets in trouble before.
Sure.
I'm those 4 days are not going to break 2 years of things that I've been doing.
Right. And you're not going to gain all the way back just from those 4 days.
I even read this thing one time that said, if you have something like that, you shouldn't weigh yourself till that number of days is over. So if you indulge yourself for 4 days, you shouldn't weigh yourself for 4 days because it's going to take that long for your body to readjust.
Balance, yeah.
So I weighed myself and it was set a certain number. I'm oh my gosh. And the next day that was down 5 pounds. Because it was just
well, and you also the toxins, I think, release because you start eating the way you're supposed to. And
so it's just having a plan on how to get back on that. So Sunday I get back, I'm tired, but I went ahead and meal prep for the week. I made some lunches, so I have that stuff so that it's just because you have those slide backs doesn't mean you've failed altogether. And I think that's one of the biggest mindset shifts is realizing that if you indulge or I don't even like saying treat, if you have if you're living normal life, it's not gonna make you fail everything else that you've done.
Right.
So like, I was pretty proud of myself. I tried to concentrate on the wins. Like I did go running while I was there. Like I didn't have to do that. I could have just, I got up before.
Completely let loose, right?
Yeah, I could have done, and it wasn't a punishment while I was there. I enjoyed doing it. I'm like, I like to go exercise, say, oh, I ran in Indiana, or I ran in the beach, and it's different experiences to kind of say you've had those experiences.
Right.
Versus just sleeping in. Like my body naturally gets up early. So I got up before everybody else. I had my clothes set out.
Right.
Picked them up and I went. So.
Well, I think that's interesting in terms of like looking at exercise as something of enjoyment.
Yes.
Rather than, something I have to do, or
yeah,
if I don't, bad things are going to happen.
Yes.
And, then it becomes not enjoyable.
Yeah.
And you're more likely to not want to go in the morning or wherever you choose to work out.
Yeah. And even as a family, like we've started like hiking as a family, like that's something we never would have done before. My husband, last year he went to, I don't know, somewhere out west to go elk hunting. And so he was doing all these like conditioning to get himself ready to like backpack through the mountains and stuff. But we started like hiking as a family, and that's something we do like normally now. And that's something I never would have been able to do because that's something I hated being hot. I would get sick.
Yeah.
Like I remember my mom has like a campsite, and we went down one year. It was like the summer, and I ended up having to leave. Like I had my son there. I was like, I'm miserable. Like I was so hot and miserable, and now it doesn't even phase. Like it doesn't. Yeah, it's hot, but I'm not like sick because of it, and that has a lot to do with the weight loss. So
yeah, yeah. Well, that's good that you're able to kind of have a new look on life and the things that you do in that. That certainly makes things a lot better. I'm curious as to the eating and nutrition. Is that how do you manage that with the family, or is there things that you guys specifically do to? Because I would imagine, obviously you have to be more restrictive than your husband or your kid, or. Yeah,
I mean, for the first probably year, I did a lot of cooking for them and a lot of protein shakes for me. And that kind of got hard just because like we do sit down and eat as a family for dinner and stuff like that. So, I just try to like, last night we had tacos, like, so I just try to have balance and know that like I eat I eat slow. Like, it's more about and even going out to eat, it kind of goes back to that. Like, it's more about the experience of being with the people you're with than the actual
the community
food.
Of the family.
Yeah. So I try to, my husband pretty much will eat whatever I cook. And my kid, if you ask him what his favorite food is, he says broccoli.
Nice.
So, I don't know why he says that, but he does like broccoli, but I don't think it's his favorite food. But he tells the doctor that every time. She's like, what's your favorite food? He's like, broccoli. So we talk a lot about, making sure we eat our meals. And, again, like as far as nutrition for the family, I work really hard with my son as far as you have to eat your dinner. I want cookies, I want chips. Okay, why don't you have a yogurt with it? Because chips and cookies, if you're really hungry, aren't going to keep you full. But the yogurt has protein in it, and it helps you. So we do talk about like stuff like that, like kind of having balance. And that's what I try to instill in him, just having some balance. Like I'm never going to be like, you can't eat that, because when I was a kid, I remember people being like, oh, suck it in or whatever to you. And I wasn't even a big kid. Like as a child, I wasn't overweight. And
you don't want to create the theme that about food. You don't want to make food such a like taboo or you
hear about, and that's why I kind of think too it contributed. Like we never had fast food, and so when I finally could get it, and like
that's a huge dopamine.
Yeah,
reward,
like I was like, ooh,
Big Mac, wow.
Yeah, wings. Like it was just. I think that it was so easy, and especially in college. Like I lived in an apartment. I lived by myself. Like you didn't know how to cook for yourself.
It was a lot easier.
A lot easier to just like order something or run through Taco Bell or something like that. So I feel like,
yeah, if you've never had really any doses of fast food your whole life, and then you go to college and you take one, it's going to be a
we had a McDonald's and a
thing.
Subway, which I have a funny story about Subway after this, but
okay.
but I won't say it on here, but
well, we could have Subway be a sponsor, and then we'll definitely not say it here. But if they say no, then maybe we should tell the story. I don't know. I'm just kidding.
But at McDonald's, so like we would occasionally have that stuff, but it was in town. You know, so it was just very rare. And we rode the bus. Like our parents didn't pick us up from school, so it's not like we would run there after school. And yeah, so just trying to have, I think just with the family is just trying to teach balance, like just making sure we have balance. We offer vegetables, we offer everything. I don't force my son to eat certain things. I make him try stuff. I keep putting it on his plate till he, does that. And then my husband, I mean, he's definitely changed too throughout this process. Like I said, we go walking and hiking together, and we take our son with us. And during last year, we went hiking one day, just us. And I was like, we would have never done this like a year ago. Like we just went by ourselves, and even my sister, she's right now trying to hike all the Ohio State parks. So we're working on that with her. So we just, as a family, going to do that stuff, I think has been huge for us. It's just being outside even. Like I really did not enjoy being outside, and I would stay in the house and watch TV and stuff. And now I rarely ever watch TV.
So it's kind of, I mean, I think the interesting piece of that is that it's the self that you carry into the activity has a lot to do with how well you experience it. So you were, and before the self you were bringing into it wasn't the one that you felt good about, and then you were getting a bad experience with it. But now you're feeling better about yourself. You've had a lot of positive experience from everything, and now you're able to enjoy those experiences more.
Yeah.
You're able to kind of experience that process.
I'm thinking more about what's going, kind of back to the food thing, like going out to eat. Like I'm thinking more about like, oh, look at that butterfly, or like versus
appreciate
like everyone's looking at me, I'm sweaty, I'm hot, like being more aware of like everything around me and enjoying those things versus being concerned about if people see me or, I'm miserable or whatever that ends up being.
Well, and then just even the way you describe your engagement with family, I think I would imagine like before the surgery, you found a lot of excuses to not engage in activities with them, outside of just kind of the normal day to day, like going for a walk or going to a activity at the park or whatever. And now it's actually led to you being more engaged as a family. And so it actually seems to encourage more connection, which actually then will be helpful for our mental health to be more connected with the people around us.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the art of comparison. So my sisters, I'm very close with them, and they're both pretty small individuals. they're just naturally thin. I don't know where my biology went with that, but like even though I would be working so hard, and then I'd be like, okay, they'd come visit me and we'd go for a run, and they're like lapping me. I'm like, I've been working at this for so long. You haven't ran in 6 months. Like, so that was always hard for me.
Right.
So I think now that kind of we're more at the same level too, it makes me feel better.
You can feel more a part of this type of activity.
Versus having to stand in the background and kind of feel like I can't do things.
I think like what's happened to us or the things that we've had to deal with or the way kind of our experiences in life really kind of affect our physical health and our mental health leads to all these, consequences that we sometimes just kind of don't even realize as they happen. But as we start to kind of find that just as much as what has happened to us can cause a lot of struggle, there are things that we can do in our life that can make things better, that we can, kind of turn things in a better direction. I would imagine what I'm hearing from you is what this experience has allowed for you to do is to kind of find new life, like be able to turn things in a direction where now you can appreciate things and find the things in life that are just more rewarding for you in relationships and connection, and just probably in other aspects of your life. So there is that, like, is there something that you can connect with that you really drew strength from through this whole process to be able to kind of shift things in that way?
I definitely think it's one of the biggest things was just, I just wanted to be like a better mom. Mm-hmm. Really. We had a birthday party for my kid when he turned 2, and it was at the gym, like a gymnastics place.
Yeah.
And he was down the foam pit, and I got down in the foam pit with him, and like I couldn't get out. Mm-hmm. Like I couldn't.
To be fair, that is really hard thing to get out of for anybody.
It's so bad,
it's not the easy. I've been stuck in there.
Okay.
Like,
well, that makes me feel now. But at the time, it was very like demoralizing.
Right.
Like I just felt so bad about myself, and that was in August, and I started kind of doing stuff by myself, seeing the doctor and stuff shortly after that. I think that was really like, I had the pictures from that party was very like, I was just like, I just don't even recognize myself. Mm-hmm. Kind of. And so that was kind of like the turning point where I was like, I need to do something different. I want to be there for my son. I want to be active. I don't want to be the mom that's, never able to, this sounds so silly, but like my son's playing t-ball, like, and they were like, oh, can you keep track of the book? Which means you have to stand in front of everybody. Mm-hmm. And I would have never felt comfortable enough to do that, because I would be like, okay, well, what am I wearing? Like, like just
you'd be too in your head.
In my head. Mm-hmm. And I think really what allowed me to, I feel like, be successful was just finally getting to the point where I realized it was okay to put myself in my priority list. Mm-hmm. I've learned to say no to people. Mm. It just internally, like, I feel like I've completely like shifted my mind in front of like.
And you said learn to say no and be okay with it.
Yeah.
I mean, because
without feeling like guilt.
Really super guilty about it.
Yeah. So, can you do this for me? Can you do that for me? And kind of being confident enough to be like, no, I'm tired from this week, and just overall, not just, so I can work out. Like, I'm not saying no for those reasons, but I'm saying like my mental health, I need a break. Like, sure. So I think the whole process has just really made me more self-aware mentally, physically.
Yeah. Hopefully no one's asking you for help at 4:30 in the morning. That's pretty early in the morning.
It's so funny. Cause there's another girl that's on my team. We have like a group message, mm-hmm. and she always texts early cause she's a mom and she's up early, and we're always like, everyone else is still asleep. Like, so she'll be like, oh, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, Courtney, we're the only ones up.
Right.
So,
well, yeah. I think about that. Like, mornings probably, like, before kids have to get up and go to school, is probably the best time for me to work out. But I really like to stay up late and just veg out. So, like, I know that if I get up early, like, so I haven't been able to, like, make sense of that.
I've never been a night owl. So that
helps.
Yeah. We were kids. We always had bedtimes, and we just defaulted to always going to bed early, which is kind of a give and take for my relationship, because my husband is a night owl.
Right.
He stays up and watches, like, we started watching a series, and he's like on whatever episode, and I'm not even close, because I don't stay up. I don't stay up. Right. I'll sometimes I do take that time if I'm on the treadmill to watch a show or something, which, if you have kids, you don't get to watch anything that you want to watch. You only watch like.
Well, exactly. I have 3, and
Bluey.
But Bluey is good. I like Bluey.
Bluey is a great show.
I love Bluey.
But
that's why I stay up at night, because they're in bed. That's when my only time to watch it. So.
Yeah. So I just like get to the end of the day and I just have no energy left usually, because even if I didn't get up at 4:30, I would still be getting up 5 so that I could get stuff ready for the day. Like, I don't know. I feel like by the end of the day, I'm completely drained. Yeah. I don't have anything left to give to anything.
Now, do you get stuff ready the night before?
Yeah.
Because
I set my kids' clothes out. I set my clothes out. I use pre-workout in the morning to get me going, honestly. But I have all this stuff like set to where it's my routine. I wake up, I go do this.
Right.
I drink my pre-workout, I get dressed, and then I go start my workout. Like, so that's been the biggest thing, is just if I don't set that stuff out, I think that I'm in the habit now that I would just go search for things, but then I'd be in the bedroom and my husband, I would wake him up, and I don't want anyone awake when I'm up that early. I always say that I get up early, but I don't people that early.
People that early. That's I'm going to use that one. I don't people right now. So just,
I just need that time for myself.
Yeah. So, people that are watching that, you know, struggle with this particular topic, struggle with weight, struggle with just figuring out how to kind of change their lifestyle to kind of achieve those types of goals. Where do you find like the most helpful resources? I know you mentioned Atomic Habits is a book that you read. Are there other things that you've drawn from to kind of help you along this journey?
I think just finding people that like, I mean, we're lucky we have social media in that way. Like there's good parts of social media and there's bad, but finding people that like are working and think the same way as you do, same goals. Like I think with the weight loss community, surgery community, it's huge, but I've discovered other people that haven't had weight loss surgery, but like that kind of like, you know, are going through those same struggles, but keep going to keep you motivated. Like that, you know, when you're facing challenges, they're the ones saying, you know, you got this, you're doing great. Like even if you like
a cheerleading crowd,
as far as like how to get started, and I think just kind of, I didn't know what my goals were when I started this whole process. Like they ask, you know, people are always, what's your goal weight? I said, I just want to feel better. Like I just want to feel good in my skin. So I think trying to figure out where to start and not trying to tackle everything at one time. Like I think if you can't figure out the eating thing, go see a dietitian. Right. They'll help you. There's ones all over the place that will, and I think one of the big things, and we talked about this a lot when I was in the department, was we had this support group people had to attend before they went to even got to see the doctor, information session. And I did a lot of research on people that are, overweight, are most likely a lot of times are self-conscious. Just making that phone call to get registered for that information session is a big step. So, I think it's just like kind of figuring out that there's other people like you. But if you're not comfortable meeting with people in person, like look on, like make sure you have those registered dietitians that do, especially now, there's anything you want can be virtual now. Right.
Most people are moving to that.
Yeah. So, and then just find something that you enjoy movement wise and start out slow, and eventually you'll, like I said, if you can get out of that mindset that it's a punishment is the biggest thing. And I don't really have any advice on how to do that besides that once it becomes like a really solid habit, then you can kind of step back and be like, oh yeah, like I feel better after I do this. Right.
Well, so you had to start off with what I always like to say is like a dose that is tolerable.
Yeah.
So like you said, you're not running the half marathon. You're starting walking down the block, or you're doing whatever your body and brain can take.
Yeah.
And then doing it repeatedly and then building from there.
And I think the other thing is like embracing that it's okay to fail. Like as I'm working out and stuff, and you say you try something and you're like, oh man, like those weights are too heavy, or that's okay. Just you try something else. I think that is one of the biggest things. It's just feeling like you're going to fail. And like, as long as, I think there's like something that says like, if you change a little bit every day, you're going to be like 30% better than you were at the end of the year. Right. Like versus if you didn't do anything.
Sure.
So.
Well, it sounds like if you don't have any clue about how to eat right, or you don't have any clue about how to exercise, you should probably find someone who does.
Yes.
And so you do it right. And that'll save you from doing something that's non-productive.
Yeah, definitely. Because that's what I said. Eventually I would go to the gym and I'd like pull up a video and I'd be like, but I never had a plan from day to day.
Right.
I was just like, what do I feel like doing today?
Or even a reason why you're doing it on that day. It just looked interesting and I'm just going to do it. But there's no real reason for why you're doing that particular activity.
And now I'm like, okay, today is push day. This day's pull day. And tomorrow's cardio day. Like that all makes sense to me.
Right.
But I couldn't come up with that myself.
Sure.
It seems so simple.
Goals,
but,
plan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's cool, this app that I do work out with, this trainer, is like, it tells you every time you increase by 33% in your weights, like overall for this particular move, it like saves it the whole journey. So it's kind of nice to hit those little milestones. And
know you're making progress.
My treadmill says, got an email today, you've had 150 workouts so far this year just on my treadmill. And
that's amazing. Your treadmill sends you emails.
I know.
That's
it has a big screen. I invested in a new treadmill. That was my gift to that was one of my gifts to myself. My husband, it doesn't fit in my basement though. I had to put it in the garage so I now have 2 areas to work out in.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Lynn. I appreciate you telling your story and sharing with our audience, your experience, both the struggles and the achievements and the progress. So we've had a variety of guests that I always know that the most powerful ones are the ones that have that lived experience and can share their story. So I appreciate that.
Well, thanks for having me. It was fun.
Yeah. All right.